That was our good buddy Matt with a 2020 L5P Duramax. You can find him on Instagram. It is 4Got4 Country. His truck is unique because it is a 2020 Duramax, and don't let the exhaust fool you guys, because as you guys just heard or not heard the turbo spool, you don't really hear anything compared to my 5-inch exhaust. Matt is running emissions compliant tuning plus Banks 5-inch exhaust, so it mimics the trucks that have 4 to 5-inch straight pipe. Banks claim there's about 15 to 30 horsepower gains from that exhaust. However, from what we've experienced in real life, with Matt's truck being on 40s, 9-inch lift and off-road bumper, we really couldn't tell the difference. However, if you're on stock application, apparently on the dyno, it does show the extra 30 horsepower or 15 horsepower. Well, I'm here to tell you guys, if you ever lift a truck, it's not gonna make a difference, but most people do it for the looks. I don't want to dive too deep into that exhaust tip, but I know people are going to be asking in the comments below why his exhaust looks like it's a 5-inch straight pipe but it doesn't make any sound. That's because it's not a true 5-inch straight pipe, it's just a DPF back exhaust. Let's go ahead and talk about emissions compliant tuning. There are 2 emissions compliant tuning for L5P Duramax. One is when you flash your ECM, and then the other option is an inline tuner such as the Banks Derringer, the Edge Pulsar. There are some modules like the Stealth module, and to be honest with you guys, the Stealth module, I had it when I bought my truck. It did slightly increase the throttle response from what I could tell, but the price point was about 400 bucks, and I would never pay that much. Maybe 150 bucks. I still wouldn't buy that module, to be honest. Only reason why I had it was because it came with the truck, but other than that, I don't think it's worth it, and that's just my honest opinion. And then there is the Banks Derringer. I don't think the Derringer is really worth it either, because in order for you to notice a difference, you have to pair the Derringer with the pedal commander. Also, another thing I don't like is when you buy the Derringer, you have to buy the pods separately. And I learned that the hard way because I ordered a Derringer and it just came with the device, no way to mount it. That to me kind of sucked because it's like extra 30 bucks that you got to spend. For the Pulsar, it is optional for you to buy the Edge CTS3, and in my opinion that is a better route, because I personally feel like when you're driving an L5P with the Pulsar, you feel like it's actually tuned. You actually feel the difference. Throttle response is way better. The ability to take control of your truck and customize is really nice. I like the CTS3 monitor. However, I had issues when it first came out with it freezing. The best way to solve that is contact Edge, and they will send you an upload file, update it, and that should fix all the bugs that you have. None of the products are perfect by any means, so everyone's got its own pros and cons, and everyone's gonna favor one product over the other. My personal favorite inline tuner is the Edge Pulsar. Now those are also referred to as box tunes or can tunes, and what that means is it's a generic tune. It doesn't actually flash your ECM, it just alters the signal going into your ECM to change like your air to fuel ratio. Other than that, it really doesn't fully map the truck. It doesn't have the capability to fully calibrate everything. Sometimes it will produce more soot, and in return it may clog up your DPF quicker than your fully flashed ECM tuning. So let's go ahead and talk about that. Let's talk about the fully flashed ECM tuning. Personally, there are 2 companies that I would recommend. It would be PPI or Duramax tuners. Matt has Duramax tuners, and I am a dealer for Duramax tuners. So if you guys need anything from DuramaxTuners.com, need tunes, turbos, or anything like that, 6-speed conversion, let me know. Best way to reach me is usually Instagram or email. So the L5Ps are a different animal. Traditionally, from LB7 all the way to LMM, you would use what's called an AutoCal and EFI Live to flash tunes. AutoCal is a device that you plug up to your OBD2 port to flash the tunes onto your factory ECM. LMLs, which started in 2011, gave you 2 options. You can use your traditional AutoCal, or you can use an auto agent from EasyLink. You have 2 methods of loading tunes and flashing your ECM. Every year GM makes it harder and harder to unlock ECMs. When the L5Ps first came out, there was not a way to tune these trucks. Probably sucked for a lot of people who bought a Duramax in 2017 thinking that they could just tune the truck and delete it. And I believe it took about a year to almost 2 years for HP tuners to figure out a way to make it work. All the way up until last month, which we're in September of 2022, you couldn't flash your factory ECM, and now Edge came up with an EVO, which is emission compliant. You can use an EVO, flash the factory ECM, and bypass the security. EVO is the first tuner out there on the market that can load tunes onto the factory ECM. But besides that, traditionally, only option you have or had was to send off your factory ECM to HP tuners. They could unlock it, upgrade it, and send that back to you, and then you can now load tunes onto that modified ECM. So if you have an L5P and you've been trying to kind of tune your truck, you are going to be hearing people talking about modified ECM and HP tuners. And let me get this straight. HP tuners does not write tunes. I don't know how many times I hear people talk about how they run HP tuners tunes. They don't write tunes. They create a platform for tuners to use to load tunes onto these vehicles. So I'm gonna say this again. HP tuners does not write tunes, okay? They're the platform. So tuners out there like Motor Ops and Duramax tuners, PPI, those guys write tunes. They use HP tuners platform to be able to load their tunes onto these trucks. If you have another vehicle, send your factory ECM off to HP tuners and do the upgrade option, so that when it comes back to you, it's still your ECM, and that means you don't have to do immobilizer relearn, no crank relearn. If you buy a modified ECM that's not originally from your truck, you will have to do immobilizer relearn to get remote start back, and you also have to do crank relearn if you have a 17 to 19. So that is the tuning process of these L5P Duramaxes. Emissions have gotten a lot better over the years, although I'm still not a fan of emissions at all, just because I've heard of horror stories because I'm on the Duramax forums, like 2020 plus Duramax forums, and I've heard cases where def heater goes out, and because we had the pandemic, the coronavirus, we have a shortage with parts. So def heater goes out on a brand new 2020, you gotta wait 4 or 5 months, sometimes even closer to a year, waiting for that emissions part to come in, so that way your truck can run again. Whereas if you delete it, you wouldn't have any of that issue. EPA is really cracking down. They are, in certain areas in New Jersey, if you're selling a vehicle that's been deleted, they will come fine you, and they're shutting down dealers and tuners. They're just going after everybody who is the tuning industry, because they're really trying to force this electric vehicle agenda, which I am not a huge fan of. Tuning, especially deleting, is getting sketchier and sketchier. So if you're having a hard time finding somebody that will delete your L5P, that's because it's not worth it for a shop to delete somebody's L5P and make $800, but then if they get caught, they're going to be fined over $250,000 to multi-million dollars. It's almost like if you're trying to tune your truck nowadays, kind of like a drug deal. You kind of have to know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody to be able to get your truck deleted. Because shops aren't going to do it. Shops aren't openly advertising that they'll do it because it's not worth it. I'm still not a huge fan of emissions, but they are getting better, especially with the L5Ps. They were built with emissions in mind, so the EGR and everything is, hate to say it, but it does run really efficiently, and EGR is really no longer a problem for these L5Ps. All the problems that we run into are def heaters and stuff like that. So we have emissions compliant tuners such as Corey Willis out there putting a lot of research and development to tuning these vehicles with emissions in mind. And Corey's even actually made several posts, and he is very confident that he can tune these emissions compliant vehicles to make just as much power as deleted vehicles. Because in the past, you deleted diesels to get more power because emissions were very restricting trying to get power. Previously, if you wanted power, you just deleted your truck. Because Corey got in a lot of legal troubles over the years with the EPA and stuff like that, which really made him focus on the compliance side. He's put in a lot of work to figure the emission system out. So now he is saying that you can make just as much power on these L5Ps with emissions compliant. I can actually kind of agree, because I've driven Matt's truck and Matt's driven my truck. He's got the compliant tune and I don't have the compliant tune. To be honest with you guys, the power difference, I really can't tell. Like, his truck makes just as much power as mine, even though he's got 40s and he's running off-road bumpers, so his truck is heavier. His truck, I would say, makes just as much power, and if we raced, I feel like I would barely beat him, just because of how good his tunes are and how impressive these emissions compliant tuning has come. And when I drive Matt's truck, it's actually really funny because, you know, all my trucks have straight pipe exhaust, so you hear the turbo spool and you hear the exhaust. So the more you step on it, the louder the exhaust gets. But Matt's truck, you step on the pedal, truck's going really fast, but you don't hear anything except the tire and a little bit of the engine noise. So it's really weird because I'm expecting to hear the turbo spool and the exhaust, but then again I don't hear anything, but the truck's going really fast. So it really like messes with your mind, and it kind of like, it really tricked my brain the first time I drove that truck, because I'm like, this is going really fast, but I should hear something. So it was kind of trippy. And from our personal experience with the emissions compliant tuning, we actually did drive 2,200 miles all the way from Vegas to South Carolina / Georgia with Matt's truck with a 40-foot gooseneck behind it, which it was empty, but it was still a 40-foot gooseneck with that weighed about 7,000 pounds, and it was running Duramax tuners emission compliant tuning, and that truck ran absolutely amazing. And that was a really good trip for us to kind of test out the tuning. We noticed less regens, less DEF consumption, and a little bit better fuel mileage as well. Better fuel mileage comes from having less regen. So yeah, overall we were very impressed. I mean, truck handled it really well. You know, it had plenty of power to pull the gooseneck that it needed to, while, you know, supporting the weight of the truck with off-road bumpers and 40-inch tires. Yeah, man, that was a show truck. We took it to SEMA, but on the way back, our tow pig had some issues, so we had to use the show truck to pull to drive back. But yeah, overall, like, we were really impressed with the emissions compliant tuning, because the power was definitely there when we needed it. But not only that, like, less DEF consumption and less regen is definitely what most people want. If they get more power and it equals to more DEF and more regen, sometimes that would be a huge deal breaker. But in this case, it was a win-win situation. You get more power and less DEF. So yeah, win-win situation for anybody wanting to tune these trucks. Let's go ahead and talk about pricing of two different compliant tuning. Edge Pulsar with the CTS3 and the Banks Derringer with the Pedal Monster. They're roughly about, let's say, $1,000 to $1,200 to get your truck tuned. Now, if you want fully flashed emissions compliant tuning from Duramax tuners and PPI, upgrading your ECM is about $600. And then if you want to do the DSP5, or if you want to do the switch on the fly tunes, that's roughly about $1,300. You also have to buy credits and the MPVI2 from HP Tuners. Credits are roughly about $400. MPVI2 is about $300, I think. So let's go ahead and say $700 plus the tunes. You're looking at $3,000 plus upgrading your ECM. So you're looking at $3,600. At the end of the day, it all comes down to your preference. I honestly think, you know, my dad has a Pulsar on his 2021 Duramax, and Matt has Duramax Tuners ECM flashed tuning on his 2020 Duramax, and I've seen both pros and cons, and I feel like for most of you guys out there that just want a little bit more power for your Duramax but don't want to delete it, Pulsar is a really good option. But if you want to get the most out of your 2020 Duramax while staying legal, ECM flashed option is the way to go. That's if you want the most out of your truck. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's all preference. Let me know in the comments below. I'm sure I'm gonna have a lot of questions regarding this topic, and then we can maybe do a follow-up video and maybe do where maybe we can line up a Pulsar versus a Duramax tuners tuned L5P and do a race. So yeah, if you guys want to see that, give this video a thumbs up. Let's get it to 2,000 likes and I will make that race happen. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.